AM 590, KXSP Omaha's ESPN Radio. It's time for the Metro's only racing talk show. The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor, Buddy Ray, and Andrew Kosiski.
Good morning, race fans. Hope you are enjoying your beautiful Sunday morning. It could turn to be a little bit of a rough Sunday, but we're going to take the beautiful weather as it is. Good morning, I'm Dan Taylor, joined as always by Buddy Ray. Buddy, how you doing, man?
Oh, we're doing pretty good.
You had some dirt track racing last night that you're going to fill us in on, probably in about turn 4.
Yeah.
Well, let's leave it at that. As some of you know, Andrew in Denver right now, working hard for Keselowski Auto Parts, so he's not able to make the show, but he did give us his picks for obviously Martinsville last Sunday, and then Texas, we'll get to it. Just
is there a new leader in that?
Just relax. Somebody's got a lucky chain going. Somebody's got the Jimmy Johnson Golden Horseshoe going right now.
Hey, what can I say?
For the show today, we're going to break down everything that happened at Martinsville because we haven't talked since Martinsville. Then we're going to talk about what happened last night at Texas. Turn 3, we're going to sit down with Pat Warren, one of our favorite guests and one of our more frequent guests, president of Kansas Speedway. Obviously, the NASCAR boys are packing up today from Texas, heading their way to Kansas, and they're going to be there for the STP 400 at Kansas Speedway. Tickets are still available, by the way, kansasspeedway.com. We'll talk to Pat about some of the off-season changes, anything they've done to it, and there was some cars that had tested there, so we'll talk to him about that. In turn 4, earlier this week, the 2014 NASCAR Hall of Fame nominees were announced. There's 25 names. 20 of them have been nominated before. There are 5 new names, and a couple of names that there's probably about 8 or 9 guys that I think should get in, but obviously only 5 are going to get in. So we're going to talk about that a little bit.
They're only limited to 5?
Right, 5 per year. So it's going to be interesting to see who makes the cut and who doesn't. And like I said, I think there's about 8 or 9 guys that deserve to make the cut, but there's only 5 that can do it. So we'll talk all about that in turn 4. Let's talk about Martinsville Speedway. Bud, you were busy. You had some plans that Sunday night, and you were not able to watch the race. But let me break it down for you. This is going to be a shocker. Are you prepared?
Let me guess. It's got 4 left turns and a finish line.
No, I'm going to talk about a driver that was ungodly fast. Can you guess?
Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson led more than half of the race, and nobody was even close to him.
Well,
not even.
Kyle Busch was giving him a run there for a short time, wasn't he?
No.
See, I thought he was.
You know what? I think Busch did give him – but honestly, I don't think it was one you could really take into account because the big concern going into that weekend was the tire wear because it's not Bristol. Bristol is incredibly banked, so there's less tire wear. It's a different compound than Bristol. The car was driving a lot faster with the camber in the rear. They were seeing some major tire wear during practice.
What was the brake issue like?
It really didn't show up as much.
Really?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. You didn't hear a lot of brake failures and tires being blown. There was a couple of them, as there always is, but not a lot of them. So Jimmy did the first couple of runs. First long green flag run. I believe it was Kyle that ended up catching him and passing him for a few moments. And I say a few moments because they did a green flag run or did a green flag stop. Chad Knaus got a chance to look at them tires. He comes over the radio, and this is really funny because I'm posting it as we're going along on the.
You got pretty good. You got pretty good on our Facebook page about doing that.
I hope everyone likes it because I take it as if I'm out dinner with family, friends, whatever, and I'm able to see it, then I can at least check on my phone, and I'm going to give you caution updates and restart updates. Anyways, so Jimmy gets 4 fresh, comes out in second place, and Chad comes over the radio, says, "Hey man, your tires are looking great. Pick up the pace." 5 laps later, Jimmy has blown by Kyle Busch and retaken the lead, and really didn't give it up much after that. Matt Kenseth had a great car, which leads me to the next statement of I kind of want to get you as the driver. Are you going to take offense to this? Denny Hamlin, after the race, and after Jimmy Johnson had won the race, and we'll get to the top 10 here in a few minutes, but obviously Denny Hamlin not racing, and Mark Martin had taken over in that 11 ride. And after the race, Vickers took over from Texas on.
Okay.
But Mark Martin was only available to race at Martinsville, which that's because there's going to be too many M's for me to try to get right. So I apologize if it's confusing. Denny Hamlin says after the race, Jimmy got lucky because I wasn't in the race. Basically, that's not an exact quote, but he said Jimmy had an easier race today because I wasn't in the race. We'll see what happens later.
Are you kidding
Denny
me?
is very good at Martinsville. Post-race, they asked Chad Knaus that, and Chad kind of laughs and says, well, I don't think it's so much as the car as it is, the driver as it is the car. Look at Matt Kenseth. He couldn't so much as get out of his way last year when he was racing for Roush, and now when he's racing a Joe Gibbs car, he's up in the front, and he was leading for a while. It was that kind of a shot across the bow, a return volley to Denny Hamlin?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have to agree 100% with Chad Knaus. You got to have a good driver, but when it all comes down to it, you had asked Andrew and I before Martinsville, what's the most important piece of the car? And if I remember right, Andrew said here a few weeks ago on the front stretch it was the shocks. I said tires and your right foot, but it comes down to the driver and the car, and basically the car.
Well, yeah, what I was getting at that question was...
the shot across the volley, though, yeah, that was a shot.
I thought that was an interesting conversation. I was happy to see that it wasn't over Twitter.
And seriously, as much respect as I have for the amount of respect that I have for Brian Vickers, who in the Sam Beep are you to tell a 5-time national champion, well, you had an easier race to win because, I wasn't in it.
Well, I think Denny has some grounds because he is very good at Martinsville.
Or Denny, yeah.
So, yeah.
But still, Jimmy Johnson, you had told Andrew and I going into Martinsville that Jimmy Johnson every year annually runs good at Martinsville.
Yeah.
And he does.
And I think he was poised. I felt like he was really poised for a comeback because he'd struggled the last couple of races. And turns out in my picks, I went with frickin' Dale Earnhardt Jr., who had the worst race he's had in a long time.
Who did I go with?
Oh, just stop it. I don't even. Who did you go with?
Boyer.
Was it? Yeah, it was Clint, and he finished second.
And who did I take last night? Oh, we'll get to that.
Top 10 for Martinsville. That's Texas. Let me get organized.
I'm blowing by my competition so fast I can't keep on the same page.
Top 10s for Martinsville, finishing 10th, Mark Martin. Let's talk about that for just a second. I'm very, very, very intrigued by this because I think we can all agree that drivers have an ego. Whether you're a sport compact driver down in the dirt level, or whether you're a 5-time champion, or someone like Mark Martin who's been around for 25 plus years. Mark was struggling incredibly at Martinsville, and he hadn't ran there in 2012. That was typically the race he took off. Brian Vickers sat down in the 55 for Michael Waltrip Racing, but he comes in and fills in the 11. So he's struggling mightily while Denny is sitting on the box, and Denny is watching this left and right. And I kind of got a little bit of a kick out of it because I saw you doing the exact same thing. Midway through the race, Denny gets off the pit box and walks down by turns 1 and 2 and is sitting right next to it, and he is just glaring as these cars go by, and he is observing every little detail he can. Then he comes up on the pit box, and he chimes on the radio and says, I can't remember his exact words, but basically he gives Mark advice for changing up his approach to the turns because Mark was going hard into the turns, which was screwing up his midway, which was then screwing up his exit. So he goes, okay, how about you back up your turn a little bit and then don't come down to the curb in 1. Wait a little bit in the middle of 1 and 2, then you come down to the curb and you accelerate off. What's Mark say? Got it. Okay. And he does it. And all of a sudden, he starts improving. That shocked me that a driver of Mark's caliber would listen to somebody like Denny Hamlin, who I'm not saying isn't a bad driver, but someone who doesn't have as much veteranship as Mark does, would go ahead and listen to him, and it worked.
Well, in racing, whether it be, at the top 3 levels or even down where Andrew and I are at right now in our careers, you could have all the success in the world, but you're never going to know anything. And a lot of times we, as drivers, we get into our head, we're at I-80 Speedway, and, for me, as an example, at the Spring Meltdown, you saw me go high into the turns, and I was really good in the hot laps, and I was really good in the heat race. But in the feature, what old Ricky Buddy do? I went backwards really, really fast. Well, I didn't think I was going to have to change my shocks. Well, I had other people telling me, you need to change your shocks. You need to change your shocks. Oh, no. We'll be fine. Guess what? Here I am. This is my 20th year racing, and guess what? I didn't listen.
Yeah,
and that's my point I'm trying to make is, Mark Martin, like you said, who'd have thought that Denny Hamlin is giving Mark Martin all this advice, but at the same time, you could be in this sport for years and years and years and not know anything. So you need to keep an open mind as a driver and listen to everybody.
Exactly. And it is a guy who everyone seems to go to for advice on how to run a track. Everyone goes to the veteran Mark Martin. That's why he is invaluable at Michael Waltrip Racing. And it's his last year at Michael Waltrip Racing. I wouldn't be surprised if another team picked him up to run a 20-race schedule just to have that information, just to have that experience to say, hey, here's our young buck, like a Richard Childress Racing. Why not pick up Mark Martin, let him run 20 races, and give your kids, your grandkids, Austin, and then eventually
here's a good.
But what I'm saying is that it really impressed me that Mark put all that aside and said, you know what? I'm kind of sucking it up right now. Maybe I do need to listen to this guy who was constantly up front. And it worked. He got himself a 10th place finish.
The one thing that here's a question I want to ask you. So you're Richard Childress. You just threw that out there. You hire Mark Martin. Do you want to go through the expense of putting Mark Martin on the track, or do you sit there as Richard Childress and go, you know what? Mark's been out here for years and years and years. Let's go ahead and keep him in the back office and let me have Mark work with the Dillon brothers, off the track and say, here's what you need to work on. Mark Martin doesn't have nothing to prove to anybody at all.
I think if you can find sponsorship, you do it. And I don't think you'd have a problem finding a 20-race sponsorship for Mark Martin.
Well, no.
So I think that's where you would do it. But putting him back in the back, not a bad idea. Put him on like a retainer or a feed, an advisor kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then, finish it out your top 10. Greg Biffle got himself a 9th place finish. Marcus Ambrose, 8th. That guy continuously is having a good season. He is getting better and better and better. I'm very impressed. Jamie McMurray with the 7th place finish. And yes, that is a Jamie McMurray appearance. Brad Keselowski gets himself a 6th place finish. Kyle Busch 5th. Casey Kane 4th. Jeff Gordon 3rd. Clint Bowyer 2nd. And Jimmy Johnson gets the victory. With that win, and oh, by the way, Earnhardt finishing back in 24th. Earnhardt loses the lead. Jimmy Johnson takes the points lead. And this is leaving Martinsville, mind you.
Didn't Junior get involved in a
Yeah, there was. I wanted to ask
accident?
You this situation. Here's pretty much what happened. We've got time for. We got a few minutes left. Earnhardt was having a bad enough day as it was. Already a lap down, and he was about a half a lap from going another lap down. I can't remember if he just spun on his own or if he got together with somebody. I'm pretty sure he got together with somebody, and he ends up spinning. Car stalls out, and I believe it was in 3 and 4, in the middle of 3 and 4. Jimmy comes around, obviously leading the field, cautions out, everyone slows down, and the way I saw it was Earnhardt was trying to refire the car, and it rolls down the hill a little bit to where he couldn't make that turn. So he puts it reverse and backs up, opening up a lane, and Jimmy goes by, putting him a second lap down. Earnhardt then gets it into gear and drives away, but he's now a second lap down. And the Fox broadcast, being the Earnhardt lovers that they are, because every one of them is in love with that guy. And I like him. I think he's great. I'm not talking bad about him, but they are inherently in love with him, and they torched Jimmy Johnson about being a bad teammate and about how this and that. When Jimmy went by and Earnhardt got it going, Clint Bowyer, who was in second, and everybody else behind him waited as Earnhardt got it going and went by. And they were all doing the right thing, but Jimmy was a bad teammate. So there was a big uproar in the Earnhardt camp. Put me in Jimmy's mindset, because I've got my idea as a spectator as far as what Jimmy did wrong or right. What do you think? Should he have let his teammate get it refired and go? What does he do?
Okay. So these other cars, they came to a stop, basically.
Yes.
But Jimmy Johnson kept going.
He came to it was kind of a pause, kind of like what you do at a stop sign.
Yeah.
And then once there was enough lane, Jimmy went by as to where everyone else actually stopped.
If Jimmy, if everybody's behind, if you're Jimmy Johnson and everybody's behind you, you don't know if they're right on your bumper or not. I mean, yeah, they got the rearview mirror, but you don't honestly know if they're right on your bumper or not. And at that moment, we don't know if he had looked at his mirror. So the fact that he came up and did kind of like a rolling stop at a stop sign, I think he was already in the mindset as everybody else. I think Fox is making this out to be a lot more than what it really is. Now, honestly, what's it hurt the Hendricks organization? They're teammates. They still have a Hendricks car up there. Junior knows that Johnson's got a great car and he doesn't have as good a car. If I'm Earnhardt, all right, Dan, go by me. Just keep on going. Let's, we're a team here.
I don't blame Jimmy for taking the opportunity to put him on the lap down. That's Dale Earnhardt, okay, Junior. He's good at Martinsville. That's why I picked him. He is ungodly good at Martinsville. Turns out later in the week we find out he had some track bar issues where it came loose and was moving all over the place, which you can't drive a car at Martinsville with a loose track bar. You can't drive it anywhere with a loose track bar, especially at Martinsville. And if I'm Jimmy Johnson, I'm sitting there going, I'm going to put this guy 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 laps down because you could get laps back pretty quickly at Martinsville, which we saw Danica Patrick do and get herself a top 15 finish.
Speaking of Danica, how'd she finish at Martinsville?
12th. Very
good.
Wow.
But I was listening to bits and pieces of the race on the radio. How much of that was contributed to good luck, fortune?
I don't think a lot of it was.
Because there were,
I don't think so.
Well, I remember there was a big pile up where there was Junior, Boyer was involved. I think Busch was involved. Yep. And she benefited from that several positions.
But she didn't gain position. She was a lap down. When the caution came out, she stayed out. Did the
lucky dog
drive around? No, did the drive around.
Okay.
And then Akasha came out about 15 laps later, so then she got the lucky dog, and she got back on the lead lap. She got her car figured out about midway through that race, and then pit strategy and having Tony Gibson up on that pit box helped her to get back on the lead lap. It was nothing more than what Paul Wolfe does for Brad Keselowski week in and week out.
Here's the ironic thing about Danica, though. The thing I heard was, Martinsville is really tough, even on the veteran drivers. You could sit here and be in NASCAR for 20 years. Martinsville will always be a challenge to you out of all the racetracks. Here's Danica, her first full season. We've seen her go to other tracks, and she doesn't look surprisingly strong, but she goes to a track that's surprisingly tough, even for the veteran drivers, and she looks surprisingly good. How ironic is that?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like the excuse bug here, but I don't think her issues have to do with her lack of experience. Stewart Haas Racing isn't just struggling.
Jeez.
They are downright pathetic right now. And Tony, arguably one of the best drivers that we'll see in a long time, can't even get a top 10 finish anywhere. I mean, they are not getting their handle on this Gen 6 car. They did better at Martinsville, but still, Tony didn't finish very well. I'm going to see, I think he finished...
He's 22nd in points right now.
Yeah, and he finished 17th. Ryan Newman finished even farther back at Martinsville. Danica got a handle on that car and was able to make it work. And it was very impressive.
If you're Tony Stewart, are you worried about your sponsors?
No.
Not
yet.
Because you're Tony Stewart?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're still the most talked about driver out there. Still the most talked about driver. We're going to take a quick break, come back, talk about what happened last night at Texas, and there is some looming potential penalties that some NASCAR drivers could see, and I'm not talking bottom feeders. We're going to see some big-time guys.
You know what I got to say about that? Cheater.
No. It's the Canals area. We'll be right back here on the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
For 50 years, Eagle Raceway has been pushing the limits of dirt track racing. Saturday nights, come see the Midwest's best battle at the fastest third-mile track. Gates open at 5:30 for IMCA Modifieds, Sport Compacts, Hobby Stocks, Sport Mods, and Race Saver Sprint Cars. Eagle kicks their season off on April 19th with the Icebreaker Challenge, featuring the debut of the Race Saver Sprint Cars. Located just 10 minutes east of Lincoln on Highway 34 and online at eagleraceway.com.
Missed the show on AM 590. You missed this.
I just wish someone in Lincoln would pull him aside and say, son, when those words are in your head, I want you to say these words.
Maybe you should make an app on an iPhone about how he can translate his words into something actually readable.
Yeah, but I have the sneaking suspicion that if he did that, it would just be him holding a phone in front of his mouth going, fishy, fishy, or something like that.
The show, weekdays 2 to 6 on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, located just north of Bass Pro. Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 200 people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team meetings, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
If you missed the show on AM 590, you missed this.
But man, they let women in. Like, that's ever a bad thing. I mean, like, you would walk up to the bouncer at any bar in Omaha and go, man, I want you to keep the chicks out of here. Dudes only. I'm here to relax. I'm here to have a good time. I've only got so much vacation time left. I can't have any women in here lousing up my concentration, trying to focus.
The show, weekdays 2 to 6 on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. We're working the high line into turn 2 on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Heading into turn 2, presented by Joe's Karting at Council Bluffs, 23rd Ave.
You have a sleep there?
I got used to saying it. I apologize. Keselowski Auto Parts is one of our great sponsors. Has moved back to a turn sponsor. Turn 3, they'll actually we're going to present turn 4 today. They're kind of a flexible sponsor, but yeah, Joe's Karting 23. You were showing me a picture on the Facebook. Is that on the Joe's Karting Facebook page?
No, not yet. I'm going to put it on there. Last night we had a bachelor party come in, and they were literally dressed as the Mario Kart characters. You thought it was pretty cool looking.
That's pretty funny. That's really funny. And the irony of that, I mean, obviously Mario Karting,
yeah.
You know.
Now Friday, we had something interesting Friday happen. We had a bachelor party come in, and I would assume the groom-to-be asked me,
did you throw a helmet again?
No.
They told you to quit throwing helmets.
No, it's cold. It's cold and chilly inside Joe's. And he goes, Can I race with my shirt off? So Rich and I are like, you want to race with your shirt off? He's like, yeah. So we would go down there to the front counter, and we're sitting there talking. We turn around. There's 10 of them with their shirts off. So we're like, we turned on every fan. We turned the overhead doors. We opened them up just a little bit.
So it just got cold.
Oh, good Lord.
And the one thing I do love about that, and during the wintertime, it does get cold there, but the thing is that I remember the old place that will leave them nameless. I remember I went and raced there one time, and I got ungodly sick from the fumes. And the first time I came and talked to you guys about advertising, I can't remember if it was you or was Rich mentioned that you guys cycle the air 10 times an hour.
10 times an hour, every 6 minutes.
Which is impossible to keep heat in when it's 10 degrees outside. So it is cold, but it's nice, clean air.
And your adrenaline will actually, what was interesting, you would think it was cold, and these guys, you could tell physically that they were cold, but after the race, they couldn't even tell they were that cold. The adrenaline was just pumping.
It's a great time at Joe's Karting. Get there, 23rd Ave in Council Bluffs. If you don't know where that's at, it's next to Bass Pro Shop, Mid-America Center, AMC Theaters.
Right across the street from AMC Theaters.
Quaker Steak and Lube, which is one of our great sponsors. And I'm going to go there tonight and watch the truck race.
Get me
some boom boom shrimp. Let's talk about Texas. There is a lot to talk about with Texas, and I'm going to start from the very beginning, which coincidentally is a good place to start. Qualifying on Friday night. Who would have ever thought it would have been a Busch brother front row? I mean, I like Kurt. I really want to see him succeed at Furniture Row, but it is an underfunded team, and they do have issues, and that guy was bad fast. And the only person that could knock him off of the pole position was his brother, who happened to set a track record for the fastest qualifying speed, 196 something.
Did Kyle qualify before or after his brother?
After.
So you think that was a little motivation?
Kurt sat there with the camera on him as his brother was making this lap, taking away his pole position. And there were still 3 guys to go after that, and nobody was able to knock him off. So it was a Busch brother front row. And Kurt ran very, very well, which Kurt was Andrew's pick. I took it Friday night from everybody, and Andrew took Kurt Busch. You took
Greg Biffle.
How'd
Greg Biffle
and I
finish?
took Casey Kane. We'll get there. That's at the end. Because we're starting with the beginning, which is the good way to start. And Kurt ran very, very well. And I felt like Kurt was going to have a good day. Obviously, starting on the pole, he was fastest in second practice. But the thing that stopped me from picking him was just simply that
it's Furniture Row, underfunded.
Yeah, and equipment issues plague the middle of the road teams. That they're not middle of the road because of just odd things, but that because they don't have enough money to have equipment that will last the entire race.
You put Kurt Busch in a Kyle Busch ride,
Yeah.
You got a formidable team.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I think Kurt is getting to that point mindset where he's getting away from the Kurt Busch we knew 2 years ago, and he's starting to mellow out and to mature. He's working really well with the team. He is hilarious on the radio. You're starting to see that funny side of him.
Yep.
He was quoting Spaceballs in the race last night. Or was it
with you.
It was during qualifying, and he was talking about ludicrous speed. And all, we're going into ludicrous speed and stuff like that.
The one thing about Kurt Busch, though, he's actually been a great spokesperson for Furniture Row. I mean, he's really, they might be an underfunded team, but everybody knows who Furniture Row is now because of Kurt Busch.
Who heard of Phoenix Racing before last year?
Nobody.
I sure didn't. I didn't even know there was a 51 on the field.
I knew of Landon Castle, and I kind of made fun of, the 51, but
Kurt brings attention to that team. He brings the media.
And that's valuable.
And that's exactly what Furniture Row needed. They needed that high-profile driver. Now, what Kurt needs is Furniture Row to have the equipment to be able to last a race. Obviously had an oil line issue at Martinsville, and his car went up into flames.
He looked good at Bristol. Looked good at Phoenix.
See, that's just it. He's looking good everywhere, but he can't finish races because equipment breaks down on him. And if there's two people that are hard on equipment in the racing in the NASCAR circuit, it's Kurt and Kyle Busch.
It's kind of like you dating women. He can get the deal done. He just can't close the deal.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing my dating life into this. Kurt Busch ends up going out with, it was about midway through the race. Thought he had an engine going, which we saw several cars thought they had engines going. Turns out to be just a fuel pickup issue. And I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it was a fuel line issue to where they went back into the garage expecting to shut off a cylinder and to run on 7 or 6, but ended up finding out that it was a fuel issue, corrected the part, get him back out there, and he ran very well. He was 19 laps down, so he still didn't get himself a good finish, finished 37th, but he was still competitive when he was out there on the track.
How did he look when he came back out on the track?
Very good, just as
a lot better.
Yeah, okay. And walked away with a undamaged car. I was very very happy to see that. Now let's talk about Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano. There was a story developing pre-race where those two cars were late getting out to the grid. Brad got his car out there and lined up. According to NASCAR rules, when the field rolls off, if you are not in your position when they line up the cars and they roll off of pit road to go to pit pace, a lot of P's, I'm screwing things up, then you go to the back of the field. Joey Logano's car was not out there. He was late getting into pre-race inspection because NASCAR had confiscated parts off of the 22 and the 2, parts from Penske Racing. From Robin Pemberton, president of competition, says that it was rear-end housing and pieces from the car. Says that we didn't like the parts. Quote, it was just something that was not in the spirit of the rules. He goes on to say, that was his quote. I apologize. And then, so something was amiss with the rear end of those cars. And so NASCAR confiscated those parts, and then they were scrambling to put new parts back on to get it within pre-race inspection. So they were late getting through. Joey Logano ends up going to the back of the field. And as soon as the green flag waves, Brad Keselowski starts dropping back because they have that car set up for their rear-end housing, which was confiscated, and now they've got to go with a different rear-end housing. So once he got that car corrected, he was making his way up through the field like it was nobody's business. Trouble is, there's probably going to be some penalties and some severe penalties from NASCAR. Now, these won't come out until late tomorrow or Tuesday afternoon, but I would expect to see some pretty heavy penalties levied against.
How heavy are you thinking, though? I see some. Oh, as you call it, some shots across the bow from NASCAR style. We're not talking $50,000 and the loss of 100 points like Jimmy Johnson last year.
Well, Jimmy, when he got fined at Daytona, I believe it was $50,000 and 25 driver points.
I don't see that extreme coming.
I do.
Do you?
I do. I see something like that happening again. Because first off, that rear end housing, this is all new area. So NASCAR needs to make a statement.
Yeah, but when you tell me it's not within the when you tell me it's not within the spirit of the rules, to me that's not saying you just blatantly put the wrong rear end housing. You just blatantly put the wrong rear gear, the center section in the rear end. You're just saying we don't like the parts. It was not within the spirit of the rules. So we see what you're doing. You're just kind of flirting with that gray area. And I'll call it what it is. You think you're Chad Knaus. Well, you're not. Now,
well, we all know that everybody in that area, in the pit road, in the garage area, likes to tweak things.
So I do see some stiff penalties coming. I just don't think there's going to be as big as what you think they could or couldn't be.
I think this is the exact same situation as the C-posts on the 48 at Daytona 2012, because that is a gray area. And that was an area that eventually NASCAR said, no, you've gone too far, 25 driver points. And I apologize, I can't remember the cash amount, but I believe it was $50,000 plus the crew chief and Chad Knaus were put on probation, which eventually they won their appeal.
But didn't NASCAR eventually come back and say, well, there was really nothing wrong?
No, they didn't. It was the procedure for which the part was confiscated and the fines were levied that I believe Hendrick had a right to go in there and say, this was handled incorrectly. We need to have the whole case thrown out, and it basically was. NASCAR remains true that was illegal because it was an illegal modification to a C-post.
They don't want to look wrong.
Right. Okay, and this is the same situation. I don't think they're going to sit there and before then they learned this from the Chad Knaus, the 48 team error that we can't go out and plead this 100% guilty case until it's said and done. So I think they just made a broad statement. It's not in the spirit of the rule. And I don't know what part it was. They never talked about it. No reports are talking about what parts it was.
I bet you it comes out this week.
We didn't know. Yeah, it will. Eventually, they'll get to the bottom of it. We didn't know exactly what modification it was. So we don't know if it was blatant or not. But this was a rule violation. And NASCAR has its gray areas. But when you go too close to that black, you get slapped. And I'm thinking 25 driver points and $50,000 is probably right where it's going to be. So that's looming for the 2 and the 22, who, by the way, both had very good days at Texas. Joey Logano finishes 5th, and Brad Keselowski finishes 9th. Now, our second-place finisher also possibly finishes some fines. Post-race inspection for the 56 of Martin Truex Jr., NASCAR found that the front end was too low. So they are going to be reviewing that penalty and decide what fines could be levied. Martin Truex Jr. currently, after finishing Texas, is sitting 16th in the points. And if there's last thing he needs is a 25-point fine.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that could go into having your front end set too low. You could have a spring that lost its spring rate. You could have a shock that, you blew out a shock.
But NASCAR's not foreign to fining for regular wear and tear on a car in a race. Remember last year nationwide, Austin Dillon was fined because a bolt had sheared loose and the car was sitting too low. NASCAR knew the bolt had sheared loose.
And still fined
They
him.
knew that modification made the car worse. So it didn't help him, but it still violated it and they still fined him.
Yeah, they're going to sit there and go, well, we need to play by the rules, and if we have a rule, we need to enforce said rules.
Right.
But I think a little common sense would have gone a long ways in that.
Exactly. And hopefully, if that's the case with Martin Truex Jr., they're able to do the same thing. But Martin Truex Jr. had a pretty clean car. He wasn't beating and banging. He wasn't hitting the wall. I mean, he had a nice, beautiful car by the time he ended that race. Texas last night, your top 10, Ryan Newman. Bloomin' Newman, he finishes in the top 10. You go out to Outback tomorrow, get yourself a free Bloomin' Onion because Ryan Newman got himself a top 10. Brad Keselowski finishes 9th. Brian Vickers got himself an 8th place finish and subbing for Denny Hamlin in that 11 car. Eric Almirola up front all night long. Didn't have a winnable car, but he definitely had a top 5 car.
Have you noticed these Gen 6 cars? We're starting to see a lot of these, what I consider B-tier drivers, running top 10 quite a few week in and week out.
We're seeing pre-Gen 5 organizations coming back to life. The ones that had success with the Gen 4 slipped on the Gen 5 because they couldn't just get the handle on it, and now we're moving into the Gen 6, which is a lot closer to what the Gen 4 was.
I think it's great watching these guys.
Absolutely. It's good to see the 43 back up front. Jimmy Johnson, shocker, up front, 6th place finish. Joey Logano getting better and better and better. Is this, give me your honest opinion, is this a flash in the pan, or has Joey Logano found a good home at Penske Racing?
I think he's found a good home, but I'm gonna have the Logano haters or the Logano fans hate me on this. If you're Joey Logano, it's no secret you've been in a lot of drama this year, especially when you wanted to call drivers out for, driving rough, doing this, doing that, regardless.
But he didn't.
Well, hold on.
He didn't.
Hold on. I'm just saying.
Well, don't say that he did when he didn't.
But don't be going out and getting, fined and having illegal parts with, that are not within the spirit of the rules.
That's not Joey Logano. That's his crew setting that up.
Hey,
you're taking two scenarios and you're trying to make a PB&J sandwich.
If I go racing tonight and my crew does something to my car, who gets fined, the crew or me? I do. I am responsible for what the crew does on my race car. Joey Logano is responsible for what the crew does on his race car.
No, he's not. The crew chief and the car chief are responsible. You don't have a crew chief. Everybody in your pit works together to make your car go fast. Everybody does. So the captain goes down with the ship.
But the captain of that ship...
It's different. Joey Logano didn't choose the gearing and the rear end housing. He didn't choose the parts. He went out there and raced the race.
But you're still the main spokesperson for that race.
Yeah, but everyone understands that when a part is illegally modified, that's the car chief and the crew chief. That's not Joey Logano. It's not those guys that are picking those parts. It's up in the NASCAR circuit, it's different than down in dirt. That's one of the differences that is blatant. Nobody thinks that Joey Logano is cheating. Now, everyone thinks Jimmy Johnson's cheating because they hate him for winning so much. But
so you think that Joey Logano had no idea what had been done to that car prior to going out?
I don't think he knew it was illegal. I don't think he sits there and knows the rule books. I don't think he knew it was in the gray area. I think he sat down in that car and drove the race.
So you're telling me that you don't think the drivers know the rule book now?
And the other thing that irritates me is that not as far as parts and pieces go. That's the responsibility of the crew chief. The other thing that irritates me is that, and we've fought about this because we're both Tony Stewart fans, he goes out there and says that Joey Logano's going on Twitter and talking bad about everybody. He said one thing about Denny Hamlin, a conflict between him and Denny. He's not out there talking trash about every driver out there about being bad drivers. And Tony was in the heat of the moment and said things he shouldn't have.
Not Tony.
Yeah, I know. And I completely agree with you. I think Joey has found a good home at Penske Racing.
Oh, absolutely.
A good home. Greg Biffle gets himself a top 5 finish, is in 4th. Shut up. Carl Edwards, 3rd place. Let's talk about Carl. Early in the race, thought he had an engine going. Later on, when he finds out it wasn't an engine going, had a bad set of tires, cuts a right rear down, comes back onto pit road, gets the tires, goes 2 more laps down, gets pit strategy, cautions work in his favor. He gets back on the lead lap, comes in to do a green flag stop. His belts come off. Goes back onto the speedway, and he's racing at 190, 200 miles an hour, putting his belts back on. How hard is that to put your belts back on? I don't know.
I've never done that at 200 mile an hour.
Well, how hard is it in a dirt?
You can't do it. I can't.
You're not turning, right?
We're constandly seesawing on the steering wheel.
There's at least a backstretch at Texas to where he can maybe stick his knee up there and then. But even then, I don't think your knee can reach up there in a sprint car because of the way you're squeezed in there. But comes out with a 3rd place finish.
You know what? With everything that he had to overcome last night, his 3rd place finish to me, I'll treat it as a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, good Lord.
Absolutely. Let's wrap up the turn. Martin Truex Jr. finishes 2nd, and Kyle Busch gets himself a victory. 300th career start, wins Friday night in Nationwide, wins Saturday night in Cup. Is Kyle Busch back to his old winning ways?
Old Rowdy's back.
I absolutely agree with you.
I tell you what, and it does not just in Sprint Cup, but in all 3 series, he's back.
I'm coming in this morning listening to post-race interview, and him and Dave Rogers did their post-race interview, and they were talking about they were testing a couple of weeks ago, and Kyle comes on the radio and goes, "What is with this engine? This is pathetic. This wasn't the engine we've had last couple of weeks." Dave comes on and says, "Yeah, this was the engine we finished with last year." That's how much different Toyota has given them with their new engines.
The only thing that Kyle Busch and his team have got to work on this year is their pit.
I think they showed it last night at Texas.
If they
Man alive, were they on fire. No speeding for Kyle Busch, which is a plus.
That's a rarity.
That's huge because he had issues with that early in the season. They had no issues on pit road, no mistakes, no penalties, nothing. And they had that first pit box, which is invaluable. I mean, you cannot put a value on that because he could come in fourth, have the exact same time as everyone else, go out with the lead.
First 5 races, if first 5 races, full pit stops for Kyle Busch were the exact same as they were last night at Texas, where would he be at in the points?
I think he'd be leading.
So do I.
With a good lead.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a really bad race.
No.
I take that back.
His runs have been...
I think it was at Bristol he got into the wall and just had a bad run. Let's see. Bristol finished... Yeah, I'm not going to be able to find it.
7 starts, 4 top 10s, 1 top 5.
Yeah.
Or nope, that was Greg Biff. Kyle Busch, here we go. 7 starts. 5 top 10s, 5 top 5s, 2 wins. Kyle Busch. Yeah, I think that's the only thing that they have to focus on, especially right now. You're out of the mulligan. You can't get no more mulligans.
Well, you can. We're early in the season. He's got his 2 wins.
He's got his 2 wins.
He can kind of relax because last year 2 wins is what got you the...
but if you're down there in 10th and on, come on, guys. It's time to shape it up. Especially Tony. Yeah. Tony, you got to start doing something, Jack.
I am beginning to worry that he is not going to make the chase. He lost another position in the points, and that
he's been in the chase every year since the chase came out.
No, he's only missed it once.
Oh, he's missed it once.
I believe Matt Kenseth is the only driver to have made it every year, but that doesn't make. I don't think that's right. I believe Jimmy Johnson's the other one too, but Tony Stewart was 2-3 years ago. I think it was 2010 or 2009 that he didn't make the chase.
Okay.
Just barely missed the chase, and then he went on to win like 4 races in it and show everybody that he's not irrelevant. They have got to get something figured out at that organization. They were talking about it last night on the broadcast about it's an engineering issue. It's not a driving. It's not a setup. It's an engineering issue. They have not got their head around this new Gen 6, and really the only difference is about 150 pounds lighter, which is huge in racing.
Oh, yeah.
And the rear end camber. That's really the only difference between the Gen 5 and the Gen 6. Obviously, the body style, the aerodynamics, but for the most part, everyone else is able to pick it up. When they throw the green flag at these races, Tony goes right to the back. And usually, if he goes right to the back, they're able to work on it and get himself a good top 15 finish.
Tony's no slouch. I mean, he's driven everything there is out there with wheels. You would think that they could put their heads around it. I mean, he's not exactly paying minimum wage engineers to work on his cars. Yeah. I mean, something's got to happen. Maybe when we see old Smoke down in Kansas City here this year for the chase race.
I don't know if it's a good idea if we ask him. Is he...
Smoke, why do you suck so bad?
I am scared of interviewing that guy. We're going to take a quick break. Around the corner, we're going to talk with Pat Warren of Kansas Speedway and find out what has happened in the offseason for Kansas Speedway. Be right back here on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
In 1999, Wade Cross decided he was tired of overpaying for shocks, so he created FX Shocks. Now FX suspension customers reach across the United States with countless wins and championships, including national champion in 3 major IMCA classes, plus Super Nationals champions in all 4 of the Saturday night's main events. Get your FX Shocks today. One-on-one consultation is waiting for you at 308-383-9609. 308-383-9609.
It's time to check out what all the dirt drivers already know. Joe's Karting is the Metro's best place to go for kart racing, where the only speed restriction is how good you are, reaching up to 45 miles per hour while twisting and turning through a 25,000 square foot building. Joe's Karting is sure to raise your heart rate. It's time to find out how fast your knuckles will turn white. Located in Council Bluffs, just north of Bass Pro and next to AMC Theaters. Online at joeskarting.com. Get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
Tomorrow is 17-year-old Logan Henriksen, who races the 206 Animal Light class at Mini E. Logan has gained the nickname Hammer Down for his never-let-up style of driving. Currently, Logan drives that number 0 Status chassis and credits Matt Kropp and Kevin Cruz at Status Chassis for much of his success. Matt and Kevin have been instrumental in getting Logan on the track each week with a winnable car. Logan has deep roots in racing, as his grandpa Henriksen raced during the 50s and 60s, and is always in Logan's pits, helping him improve his lap times. Along with his grandpa, Logan says there are several drivers that inspire him each week, including Matt Gropp and Casey Kane, who he hopes will give him a shot at his racing school. It would be a dream come true to pull into victory lane while racing sprint cars for Casey. Keep your eyes on this week's Legend of Tomorrow, Logan Hammer Down Henriksen, as he wheels the number 0 cart around Mini E in 2013. This week's Legend of Tomorrow on the front stretch.
Time to grab another tear-off and make your move. We're headed into Turn 3 on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting.
Welcome back to the front stretch, headed into Turn 3, where, as always, we sit down with either a dirt track driver or a NASCAR important E, and tonight we happen to be talking to one of our favorite NASCAR important E's. Yeah, okay, I invented a word there. Pat Warren with Kansas. Well, I have a tough time spelling regular words, better yet ones I made up. Talking with Pat Warren of Kansas Speedway, president of Kansas Speedway. Pat, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good, man. It's been a couple of months since we talked to you. What's new with you?
Well, obviously we're getting ready for our spring race. We're just a couple of days away at this point, and we're getting the track ready for some great racing.
Last year, everybody knew that Kansas City went through the repave. And what was the feedback from the drivers, the team owners, those that are important? What was the feedback like on that repave?
Well, we had a record number of cautions in our fall race last year, and the slowest qualifying speed was faster than the prior track record. So the track is really fast. It's really smooth. With the increased banking, there's a lot of speed. The challenge is when you've got a really smooth track, NASCAR and Goodyear bring a tire that's really hard. And when they bring a hard tire, then you don't have tire fall off, and it makes it harder to navigate pit stops, etc. And so they love the track. They wish we had a little bit different tire, but they're really excited about coming back in April. That
kind of led into my next question here. Has Goodyear looked at changing the tire selection due to the 17 cautions last year at Kansas Speedway?
I think we had 12 cautions, but no, as far as I know, we're not going to have a new tire.
Have any teams come down and tested at Kansas with the new Gen 6 car?
Yeah, Roush was here, and I believe Petty Motorsports had one car last week.
Did any of them talk to you about what they learned as far as how the handling is going to go?
I didn't ask any of the drivers. I talked to Carl Edwards, I talked to Greg Biffle, and I talked to Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and they were all talking about the speed of the track. They could tell that the track had aged a little bit, and I was actually out on the track on Sunday putting down rubber and with our tire machine, and when I did that, I could see you're already seeing small gaps in the asphalt, which ultimately is going to create some tire wear and other things. Not so much for this race, but I think down the road.
We've seen, you talked about some of the track speeds that Ricky and Carl and those guys saw with the testing in the Gen 6, and we've seen that with a couple of tracks already on the schedule that the track records have been broken and destroyed. Are you expecting to see Casey Kane's track record of 28.219 in jeopardy?
I don't know. We had the Gen 6 car on track last year when we did the tire test, and then actually on the Thursday that they did testing. So I don't know that the difference between the cars is going to have as much of a difference as the repave. It's really tough for me to say. I didn't ask them for any times. I don't, that's not really my job. What I want to do is make them feel welcome when they're here testing.
Obviously, at Auto Club Speedway, the big story going into Martinsville was Denny Hamlin's injury. Have you worked much with Auto Club Speedway as far as taking a look at Kansas? And is there any walls that are exposed that you guys are maybe looking at covering up with safer barrier after Denny's accident?
We used to have the longest uninterrupted stretch of safer barrier of any track in the country. I don't know if that's still the case or not, but almost all of our exterior crash wall is covered by safer barrier, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And the entire backstretch, 2,700 square feet, we added last year's safer barrier in addition to adding a skid pad. So we feel really good about the safety we've got in place. We examine it every year. We look at it with NASCAR and the outside agency they bring in. So we haven't done anything since Auto Club, but we'll certainly revisit it.
With being a part of International Speedway Corporation, being the track owners for Kansas, do you guys work much with tracks? I guess my general question to get to this is, did you work with officials from Watkins Glen to help design the road course that you guys went through in the middle of last year?
No, I know Michael Printup, the president of Watkins, Glen, really well. But actually, the group that we worked with in designing the road course was Grand Am, which is now the Unified Sports Car Series. And so we worked directly with their officials and with drivers. We actually had drivers come out and look at the course when it was dirt, before it was pavement. And what they said they wanted for a roval, and inside an oval road course, was a wide course with a lot of speed and the ability to pass. We've given them that. They're really excited about coming out in August, and we're excited about hosting a race.
Yeah, we're thrilled to be down there again, and I'm excited. I kind of want to go down there because you guys happen to schedule that on the best day of the year.
Is it your birthday?
That happens to be my birthday.
Oh, dear Lord.
And I got to tell you this little story. Buddy and I felt like the biggest dorks in the world. We're walking around Kansas last year when you guys invited us down in October, and it was Saturday night, and we're kind of enjoying the infield. And we're walking around on this new pavement. And we're like, wow, this is kind of nice. Kansas laid down some new pavement for all the infield guys. And then we saw this weird lining on the outside of the pavement, and I thought, well, that's a really weird way to tell somebody that the corner turns. And finally I realized, wait, that's the rumble strips for the new road course. Kansas just spent all this money laying down.
At which point in time, I told Dan to put the beer down.
It's actually, though, when you're down there, it's hard to tell.
It really is.
Above, you can see it really easily. But if not, you can't tell that it's not just an infield road.
Now, as the Grand Am Rolex Series that's going on August 16th and 17th, is that the first time that they're going to have a race on the road course?
Yeah, well, it's the first time that we will have that series on the road course. We're actually going to have a Porsche Club of North America race at not the end of June, but the third week of June.
The one thing I've noticed every year, Kansas Speedway, your crew goes through, they always look and try to develop new things for the drivers and whatnot. But for the fans this year, do we have anything new scheduled for the fans?
You know, probably the biggest thing that we've changed from last year is we've introduced youth pricing. And so we have tickets for kids that are 12 and under. For the truck race, those tickets start at $15. And
wow.
So you can there's over 7,000 tickets priced at under $15 for kids 12 and under for the Saturday truck race. And we've got similar price discounts for the Sunday race, the most economical opportunity we've ever had to attend a Sprint Cup race at Kansas.
Now, the NASCAR boys just packed up last night from Texas, finished that race, and now they're headed your way into Kansas. When do they generally start arriving, and when can fans start to get in for qualifying and practices?
Well, the campers come in Thursday morning, the teams come in Thursday night, and Friday morning is when we open the gates, and we'll have practice and qualifying, and then Saturday, of course, we've got the SSP 250, and Sunday we've got the STP 400.
And tickets are available at KansasSpeedway.com?
That's correct, KansasSpeedway.com, or they can call 866-460-RACE, or they can buy it at the box office.
Pat, we really appreciate your time, and thanks so much. Have a great race weekend, man.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate it.
And that was Pat Warren, president of Kansas Speedway, joining us here on The Front Stretch. We'll be back in just a few minutes to wrap up the show. This is The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
We have all been there before. Broken car part in your hand and some snot-nosed punk behind the counter has no idea what he's talking about, but he guarantees that this part will fix your car. You pay an arm and a leg for the replacement, get it home, and sure enough, it doesn't fit your car. Now, learn from your mistake and give an experienced salesperson at Keselowski Auto Parts a call today at 402-731-4592. Keselowski Auto Parts will get you back on the road with your arms and legs still attached.
In 1999, Wade Cross decided he was tired of overpaying for shocks, so he created FX Shocks. Now FX suspension customers reach across the United States with countless wins and championships, including national champion in 3 major IMCA classes, plus Super Nationals champions in all 4 of the Saturday night's main events. Get your FX Shocks today. One-on-one consultation is waiting for you at 308-383-9609. 308-383-9609.
It's time to check out what all the dirt drivers already know. Joe's Karting is the Metro's best place to go for kart racing, where the only speed restriction is how good you are, reaching up to 45 miles per hour while twisting and turning through a 25,000 square foot building. Joe's Karting is sure to raise your heart rate. It's time to find out how fast your knuckles will turn white. Located in Council Bluffs, just north of Bass Pro and next to AMC Theaters. Online at joeskarting.com. Get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
Get ready for the victory lap. as we make our way into Turn 4 on the front stretch. Presented by Joe's Karting. Online at joeskarting.com.
Just about ready to wrap up the show here on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting.
Mario and Luigi were there. Go to Joe's Karting Facebook page. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Well, we got a lot to talk about in Turn 4, so we're going to try to get through it quickly. Unfortunately, we're going to start Turn 4 with some bad news. Local IMCA driver has been racing in the Midwest for quite a while. Dave Hubbard lost his life this week. Thursday night, Friday morning, involved in a single-car accident and passed away. So we want to make sure to send our condolences to the Hubbard family as they're going to be dealing with some tough times. You can send your condolences to their Facebook page, and I believe they're going to be setting up a fund, too, to also help out with some of the expenses. So best wishes to the Hubbard family. I know you'd made it aware of me that Dave had raced a couple of times at Denison last year. So
that's what I was told, yep.
Number
5 car. Number 5 late model.
Late model, okay. All right. Hall of Fame nominees, don't have time to get to it today, so we're going to talk about it next week. We'll give you a full breakdown. Hall of Fame, I'm getting confused. Hall of Fame nominees, we're going to talk about them now. Truck race format for Eldora was announced earlier this week. We're going to break that down when Andrew gets back next weekend's show. As far as the nominees for the 2014 NASCAR Hall of Fame, Red Byron is one of the first ones. Richard Childress, team owner, 11-time car champion owner, and 3-time National Series. Jerry Cook, 6-time National Modified champion. H. Clay Earls, Tim Flock, Ray Fox, and Annie B. France, who is the wife of Bill France Sr., effectively known as Annie B. She was the first woman to be nominated to be inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Team owner Rick Hendrick, Jack Ingram, Bobby Isaac, who was the 1970 NASCAR Premier Series champion, which is now the Sprint Cup Series. Dale Jarrett, 1999 Sprint Cup Series champion and 3-time Daytona 500 winner. Fred Lorenzen, Raymond Parks, Benny Parsons, who had a career, both him and Dale Jarrett both had good racing careers. Benny was the 1973 Sprint Cup champion, Dale 1999, and then both of them went on to have successful broadcasting careers afterwards. Maurice Petty, who is the chief engine builder for Petty Enterprises and was a major part in winning a lot of those championships for the King. Larry Phillips, father of Terry Phillips, who we interviewed a couple of months ago on the Legends of the Dirt. Les Richter, Fireball Roberts, 33 NASCAR Premier Series wins, and the 1962 Daytona 500 champion. T. Wayne Roberts, Wendell Scott, who was the first African-American to win a race in the NASCAR circuit and is the first to be nominated into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Ralph Seagraves. O. Bruton Smith, owner of Charlotte Motor Speedway and the chief architect of Speedway Motorsports, owns several tracks throughout the Midwest, throughout the country, actually. Curtis Turner, Joe Weatherly, and Rex White. Now, most of them are Premier Series champions, which is now the Sprint Cup Series.
That's all the nominees.
That's all 25 of them. 25 will be nominated. There was 5 new nominees this year. Only 5 of them will make it in. Bud, give me your 5 you think will make it in.
You know, as you're sitting here reading off the nominees, I don't know if you noticed them, I'm sitting here writing down who I thought. Honestly, when you're going to be in the Hall of Fame, I think you need to be someone that's completely retired. It's not fair. So to me, I'm thinking Fireball Roberts, great racer. He came back from the days when he had 40, 50 cars in a race. Wendell Scott, Larry Phillips, Dale Jarrett, Benny Parsons.
You don't think either of the team owners are going to get in?
I think it's too early for them. They got a long life ahead of them. They've done a lot. But, okay, is Jimmy Johnson Hall of Famer right now?
Well, you do have to be a retired race. Well, I don't know the Hall of Fame nominees. But, yeah, Jimmy Johnson is a Hall of Famer, yeah. But he's not being nominated. Richard Childress and Rick Hendrick are. Both of those guys have been involved in the sport for well over 30 years.
Actually, let me change that. Flock, Parson, Roberts, Phillips, Scott.
Well, we've plumb run out of time. You've got 5 seconds. I can't even say that. We're going to have to wrap it up. We'll save your conversation for I-35 for next week. We thank you for joining us. This has been The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.